My husband accused me of cheating in front of his entire family at his sister's birthday dinner, so I connected my phone to the TV. The moment his sister whispered, "Please don't," the whole room understood why. The room smelled like buttercream and red wine when my marriage ended. There was a happy 40th banner above the fireplace, family photos cycling on the TV, blue ocean, sunburned cousins, big smiles, the greatest hits of a family that had always looked better in photographs than in person. 20 people distributed across sofas and folding chairs and the patch of hardwood near the kitchen island, holding plates and wine glasses in small conversations. Daniel stood in the middle of it all with his wine glass and his careful, rehearsed calm. "Tell everyone the truth, Claire." His voice was quiet, almost gentle, the way a trap is quiet, right up until it isn't. "Are you cheating on me?" 20 people went silent. His mother froze with the cake knife midair, a perfect still life of suspended disbelief. His aunt set her fork down so slowly, the tine scraped the plate in a long, terrible note. A little boy near the coffee table, someone's nephew, 5 or 6, holding a toy truck, looked up from the floor with wide eyes. Children always know when a room turns dangerous. I didn't panic. That surprised me more than anything else that night. 7 years of marriage, and in the moment my husband tried to publicly execute me, my hands were steady. My breathing was even. My purse strap was cool against my palm. I wasn't looking at Daniel. I was looking at Rachel, his younger sister. Yellow dress, seated on the edge of the couch like a woman who had spent the last 30 seconds calculating exits. Her knuckles had gone white against the cushion. Her face had gone the color of old paper. And she wasn't confused. She wasn't surprised. She was terrified. That was when I understood everything. Not suspected, not wondered. Understood. The clean, airless clarity of a thing finally named. I reached into my purse. Daniel's composure slipped, just a fraction. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I walked past him toward the TV. I unplugged the device playing the family photos, connected my phone, opened the blue folder I had created at 2:16 that afternoon, and spent 11 minutes making absolutely certain would survive anything Daniel tried to do to erase it. Rachel stood up. "Claire," she whispered, "please don't. Not what is that. Not what's going on. Please don't." The whole room heard it. I pressed play. The wine glass slipped from the side table and shattered on the hardwood floor. Nobody looked at it. Let me tell you about the 18 months before that moment. Because the birthday dinner was not the beginning. It was barely the middle. Daniel Mercer and I met at 26, married at 29, and spent the first 4 years building something I genuinely believed in. He was an architect, mid-size firm, good reputation, the kind of work that got featured in regional design publications and made him easy to admire. I was a project manager at a healthcare consulting firm, 12-hour days, good at my job, the kind of person described as reliable. So often I'd stopped hearing it as a compliment. We were compatible in the specific way that two organized, driven people can be compatible. Efficient, parallel, functional, not passionate exactly, but solid, or so I thought. The first crack appeared 18 months ago, and I almost missed it. We were at his firm's holiday party. I was talking to a colleague of his, a man named Greg, mid-40s, perfectly ordinary, someone I'd met twice before. And Daniel appeared at my elbow with that smile, the one that doesn't reach his eyes, and steered me toward the bar with a hand at the small of my back that was just slightly too firm. In the car afterward, he asked how I knew Greg. I told him, from the last 2 holiday parties. He said, "You seemed comfortable with him." I said, "He's your colleague." I was being polite. Daniel looked at the road for a long time before he said, "I just want us to be honest with each other." I filed it as stress. He'd been under pressure at work. The holidays made everyone a little raw. I told myself this was nothing. 3 weeks later, he asked about a text on my phone from my college roommate Dana. Why was she texting so late? What did "can't wait to catch up" mean? Was I planning a trip he didn't know about? I showed him the full thread. Cheerful, boring, plans for a weekend brunch. He apologized, said he was sorry, said he trusted me. I believed him both times, because when a person apologizes convincingly enough and you love them, you take the apology as evidence that the behavior was an aberration. You don't take it as evidence that they're getting better at apologizing. I should have. The interrogations escalated gradually enough that each individual instance felt manageable. That's the design. A grocery receipt? I'd stopped at Whole Foods on a Tuesday, 40 minutes longer than expected because the line was long. Daniel found the receipt in my coat pocket. "Why were you there so long? The checkout line, the self-checkout, or the regular line?" "Daniel, I'm just asking." A 2-minute delay returning a work call became, "Who were you talking to that you couldn't call me back?" A smile at a waiter. I was being polite. I smile at waiters. It is not a character flaw. Became a 20-minute conversation at midnight about whether I was looking for something he wasn't giving me. I started keeping a log, not because I thought I'd need it, because I was going insane, and writing things down made me feel less insane. I used the notes app on my phone, time-stamped, just the facts. Tuesday, 7:14 p.m. Asked about Whole Foods receipt. I showed him the receipt. He dropped it. My therapist, Dr. Nadia Reeves, she'd been my therapist for 4 years, a cognitive behavioral specialist who had the particular gift of asking questions that felt like observations, read through 3 months of the log, and was quiet for a long moment. "Claire," she said, "this is a pattern of coercive control." I'd heard the term. I hadn't applied it to my life. "He apologizes," I said, "every time." "Yes," she said, "that's part of the pattern." I drove home from that session in a fog, the kind that settles in when something you've been avoiding becomes unavoidable. I sat in my car in the driveway for 14 minutes before I went inside. Daniel was on the couch with his laptop. He looked up and smiled. "How was Dr. Reeves?" "Good," I said. "You seem tired." "Long day," I said. I went to bed at 9 and stared at the ceiling and thought about patterns. The discovery happened on a Sunday morning in February, 7 weeks before Rachel's birthday dinner. Daniel was in the shower. His phone was on the kitchen counter, screened down the way he'd started leaving it, which I had noticed but hadn't remarked on because remarking on things had started to feel dangerous. The phone buzzed. I didn't pick it up. I want to be clear about that. I was making coffee. I heard it buzz and I did not pick it up. It buzzed again, then a third time, in quick succession. succession, the pattern of someone sending a message in pieces. Then it lit up with a preview, just the banner notification, the kind that appears even on a locked phone. I wasn't trying to see it, but I saw it. The contact name was saved as R, just the letter, a single character, which told me everything before I read a single word, because Daniel had a full contact list with full names except for this one. The preview read, "Last night was. I can't stop thinking about." The notification cleared before I could see the rest. I put my coffee down. I stood in my kitchen for a long time. Then I went to work. I know that sounds strange. It was Sunday and I went to work. Not to the office, but to the job of understanding what I was dealing with before I moved a single piece. Because I had learned from 18 months of being surveilled and questioned and managed that information only matters if you protect it before the other person knows you have it. I thought about R. I thought about who in Daniel's life had a name that started with R. Use. I thought about Rachel and her yellow dress and the way she'd always been slightly too eager to be alone with Daniel at family events, always slightly too quick with a private joke, always slightly too comfortable, and I had noticed it and filed it as, "That's just how they are," because filing things as, "That's just how they are," is easier than the alternative. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I called my attorney. Vivian Cross had been a family law attorney for 21 years. She had an office on the 14th floor downtown, a reputation for being surgical that I'd read in 3 different reviews, and the kind of stillness that comes from having sat across from devastated people for 2 decades and learned to hold the room. I sat in her office on a Wednesday afternoon and told her everything. The log, the grocery receipt interrogation, the midnight conversations, the R on the phone. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You haven't confronted him." "No." "Good." She made a note. "Don't. Not yet." She looked up. "I want you to do something for me. I want you to consult with a digital forensic specialist before you do anything else. If there's evidence on shared devices, in cloud storage, in email threads, we want it retrieved properly. Inadmissible evidence is worse than no evidence in a contested divorce." She referred me to a man named Thomas Greer, 17 years in digital forensics, former law enforcement, now private practice. He was quiet, methodical, and wore the expression of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by what people did on their phones. We met on a Thursday. I brought my laptop and the login credentials for the shared iCloud account Daniel and I had set up 3 years ago to manage household photos and documents. Thomas found the secondary iCloud account within 40 minutes. Daniel had created it 14 months ago, a second account under a variation of his email address that he'd been using for a secondary messages thread. Thomas retrieved deleted messages going back 11 months. He saved everything to an encrypted drive with chain of custody documentation. He handed me the drive with both hands, like it was fragile. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. The messages were between Daniel and R, 14 months. Not a mistake, not a moment of weakness. A sustained, intentional 14-month relationship conducted in the cracks of our marriage while Daniel asked me to justify grocery receipts. R was Rachel. I sat in my car outside Thomas's office and breathed through my nose for a while. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the encrypted drive on the passenger seat. Then I called Vivian. "I have it," I said. A pause. "How bad?" she asked. 14 months, I said. Another pause. Longer. "Okay," she said. "Here's what happens next." What happened next was 6 weeks of the most careful, deliberate patience I have ever practiced. Vivian filed the preliminary divorce petition on a Tuesday, quietly, without serving Daniel yet, preserving the element of surprise. We documented the marital assets, the joint account, the investment portfolio, the equity in the house. A forensic accountant named Sandra Park, 22 years in matrimonial financial analysis, the kind of woman who found numbers other people had hidden and made them visible, spent a week going through the financials and found what she called consistent irregularities in Daniel's personal account. Money moved to a secondary account in amounts just under $10,000, the threshold that triggers automatic reporting every 6 to 8 weeks for the past year. "He's been building a fund," Sandra told me over the phone. "My best estimate, about $87,000 total. It's consistent with someone preparing to leave while maintaining the appearance of a shared financial life. He was building an exit while accusing me of infidelity. The accusations, I understood now, were a preemptive strike. If he could establish me as the unfaithful party, he controlled the narrative of the divorce. He'd spent 7 years learning which levers made me doubt myself. He thought he knew exactly how I'd respond to public humiliation, that I'd crumble, deny, apologize, try to manage his feelings the way I always had. He had miscalculated on one significant point. I had the drive, I had Vivian's strategy, and I had 6 weeks of knowing the truth while he didn't know I knew it, which had given me something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Calm. On the afternoon of Rachel's 40th birthday, I spent 2 hours preparing. At 2:16 p.m., I moved the complete evidence folder, the message archives, the screen recordings, the time-stamped screenshots, the deleted message captures Thomas had retrieved to iCloud Drive. At 2:21, I copied it into a Gmail draft addressed to myself, Vivian, and Thomas, set to auto-send in 24 hours unless I canceled it. At 2:27, I saved a second backup to a folder on my phone called House Insurance, because once you find the truth, you learn fast. Evidence only matters if it survives the person who wants it gone. I did my hair. I put on the green dress. I drove to the party. I was there for 20 minutes before Daniel made his move. I had known he was going to do something. Not this exactly, not this publicly, not this audaciously, but I'd felt it building in the 2 days prior. He was too calm, too pleasant. The dangerous calm I'd learned to recognize. The stillness before performance. At 7:42 p.m., with the birthday cake still on the kitchen counter and 20 people in the room, Daniel set his wine glass down and said my name. "I've already told you what happened in the first minute. What I haven't told you is what happened in the second." After Rachel said please don't, after the whole room heard it and understood without understanding why they understood, I opened the folder on the mirrored TV screen and pressed pressed play on the first recording. Daniel's voice came through the speakers. Low, warm, intimate, the voice he used when he thought no one was listening. Then Rachel's voice, then silence, then his mother, in a voice I had never heard her use. Daniel, not a question, not confusion, just his name, the way you say a name when a word is the only thing left. Daniel looked at Rachel. Rachel looked at the floor. I pressed pause. You wanted the truth, I said, in front of everyone. I looked at Daniel directly. There it is. The wine glass had shattered somewhere behind me. I was aware of it the way you're aware of weather. Present. Irrelevant. Daniel took 2 steps toward me. His face had passed through shock and landed somewhere I didn't have a word for. Claire, those are out of context. You don't. That's not 14 months, I said. He stopped. I have 14 months of messages, I said. Recovered from the deleted history on your secondary iCloud account. Documented by Thomas Greer, forensic analyst, chain of custody intact, filed with my attorney as Exhibit A through Exhibit F. Exhibit A through F. I had practiced saying it. The specificity Vivian had told me is what makes it real to people. Anyone can make an accusation. Not everyone can say Exhibit A through F. The room was very still. Rachel had sat back down. Or maybe she'd never fully stood. She had both hands pressed flat on her thighs, and she was staring at a point on the floor with the particular focus of someone trying to disappear into the middle distance. Julie, Daniel's older sister, who had told him don't do this before any of this started, was standing near the kitchen doorway. She had one hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wet. Daniel's mother had set the cake knife down. She was seated now, very upright, very still, her hands folded in her lap, and she was looking at her son with an expression I recognized because I had worn it myself. The expression of a person watching the version of someone they loved dissolve into the actual version. The divorce petition was filed on March 4th, I said. Daniel will be served tomorrow morning. I picked up my purse from the couch. I'm sorry this happened at your party, Julie. I looked at Julie specifically. Because Julie had known, I understood now. Not the details, but the shape. She had tried to stop it. That mattered. I'm not sorry about the rest, I said. I walked to the door. The weeks that followed had the quality of a controlled demolition. Deliberate, methodical, irreversible. Vivian filed the formal divorce petition, with the full evidence package attached on a Monday morning. The forensic documentation from Thomas Greer, Exhibits A through F, 340 pages, was submitted to the court as supporting evidence in the asset division proceedings. Sandra Park's financial analysis identified the $87,000 in transferred funds and filed a formal disclosure request. Daniel's attorney, a man named Philip Crane, who had a reputation for aggressive negotiation, called Vivian on a Wednesday and was, by her account, very quiet for most of the call. He knows what we have, Vivian told me afterward. He's going to advise settlement. He did. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. I received the house, which I chose to sell. I didn't want it. The full value of the joint investment portfolio, and a settlement that reflected the $87,000 in diverted marital funds plus interest. Daniel kept his firm, his car, and whatever he and Rachel had built together in 14 months of deleted messages. I don't know what happened between Daniel and Rachel. That was between them and their family, which was no longer my family, which I understood was a loss and tried to treat as such honestly. Julie called me once 3 weeks after the party and said, I should have told you sooner. I had a feeling for a long time. She cried a little. I told her she'd tried to stop it that night and that it counted. I meant it. Dr. Nadia Reeves and I had a session the week the divorce finalized. I sat in her office, the one with the gray couch and the small succulent on the windowsill, and she asked me how I felt. I thought about it honestly. Like someone who spent 18 months being told their perception was wrong, I said, and turned out to be right about everything. She smiled. How does that feel? Expensive, I said. And worth it, she laughed. A real one. I hadn't made her laugh in a while. Epilogue 1 year later. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I chose entirely for myself, based on no one else's preferences or commute or need to be close to his family's house. It has good light in the morning. I bought real furniture. I have a plant on the windowsill. A succulent, actually, because Dr. Reeves's survived, and that seemed like a sign. I kept the notes app log. All of it. 18 months of time-stamped, documented, ordinary moments that a man tried to make me feel guilty for. I don't read it often, but I keep it because it is evidence of something important. That I was not crazy. That my perception was not broken. That the problem was never my grocery receipts. Vivian sent me a card when the settlement cleared, handwritten, which I hadn't expected. It said, "You were the most prepared client I've had in 21 years. That's why you won." I put it on my refrigerator. Thomas Greer sent a brief email. Glad it helped. Stay safe. Daniel, as far as I know, is still in the city. Still at the firm. I don't track him. That's not my job anymore. Rachel, I heard through Julie that she and Daniel ended things sometime in the months after the party. I don't know if that's true. I don't need it to be. What I need, what I have, is the version of my life that belongs entirely to me. No interrogations, no midnight conversations about grocery receipts, no carefully calibrated performance of guilt for things I didn't do. I went to Whole Foods last Tuesday. I was there 45 minutes because the line was long. I didn't explain it to anyone. That still feels every single time like freedom.